All right, so here we are. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the three of you and to anyone who's listening to us. I am Catherine Jordan, and this is our week 3 talk on community resilience in changing times with the theme of nature. So welcome briefly to Emma, Matti and Anu. Welcome to the call today. I will introduce the three of you a bit more, but I just wanted to firstly just read something to kind of bring us into the theme of what we're talking about today. So I looked at lots of different things to read, and there's so many, as you can imagine, there's so many amazing things to read on nature. And I was, I spent a long time deliberating and got very overwhelmed with the decision of what to read. And then I read something a friend of mine posted on Instagram, and he's a writer and poet, and he writes particularly on connection with nature in supporting him with mental health. And I really loved what he wrote. So actually I've decided to settle on something really simple. So it's written by a friend of mine called Rich Green, who's on Instagram. Rich Green 2 is his name. And this is something he wrote last week called Getting High. Sometimes I just don't feel it. Despite the bright sunshine and the glistening frost, my heart just wasn't in it. On days like this, I get high. Heading up onto higher ground helps me gain some perspective. It lifts my mood as if by altitude alone. Sitting with my face to the wind, pink-cheeked and breathing hard, I can almost taste the endorphins flooding my body. Above, a lone buzzard circles, rising and dropping in the air, effortlessly, as though attached to an invisible kite string. I've only walked a short distance, not very far at all, but I'm learning not to measure my achievements in miles or meters. An easy trap to fall into, which leads to comparing myself to others, ultimately ending in feelings of not good enough. Instead, I am grateful to be out of my warm, comfortable bed and outside, alive on this beautiful morning. I have met nature halfway today, and she is always happy to see me. I reward my efforts almost ritualistically, regardless of the logistics. Peppermint tea from my trusty flask warms me and slows me down sufficiently to breathe in my surroundings. The lush greenness of the moor and the wildlife both seen and hidden. Our greatest achievements are personal, small victories unseen by others, but so greatly important. No less hard-won for their invisibility, no less meaningful in their privacy. Nature encourages me to be kind to myself, to be mindful and gentle towards my struggles. The first snowdrops are pushing through the cold, wet earth all around me at this time of year. I revel in their arrival and the coming season they foretell. I think of their struggle to breach the wintry ground. Though a tiny part of nature they may be, they are amazingly resilient. So thanks, Rich, for letting me read that if you're listening. So I'll just begin by introducing our speakers who have graciously said yes to being here today. Anu, AZRAEL, is that correct? Am I pronouncing that right? He's not answering me. So Anu is supporting the embodiment of presence through systemic and somatic therapy, meditation and prayer. So welcome, Anu. Emma Smart. Hello, Emma. Emma is a shamanic healer and teacher of practitioner of womb wisdom and sacred sexuality, sacred sexual energy arts. That's actually quite a mouthful. welcome, Emma. And Matti Spence. Matti, do you prefer to call Matti or Matthew?
Matti.
Matti, okay. So Matti Spence. Matti is a nature-based counsellor and creative writing therapist who is based on Dartmoor. Welcome, Matti. So I'd just like to invite you to just, bring yourselves into the space, share a bit of your story with us about why you're here today and felt drawn to speaking on this theme. Anu, would you like to go first?
Yeah, sure. So this morning I got a reminder or a memory from Facebook on this same date last year. I was driving through Cairngorms National Park in Scotland, listening to the Landscapes of Presence chapter in John O'Donoghue's book, Walking in Wonder. And it really touched something in me that I reconnected with this moment today, whilst also, you know, coming into this conversation and talking about nature. Yeah, so I feel like John O'Donoghue for me has become in the last year a very strong spiritual teacher, and he's really from the afterlife given me a much deeper level of connection in nature and a capacity to listen. And I'll talk more about that later. The pandemic and John O'Donoghue have basically been radically the combination.
Oh, we can't hear you, Anu. It's just cut off. Can't hear you. I'll cut to Emma. Oh, you're having to play with that. But yeah, thanks for sharing that. Actually, John O'Donoghue was the one I was going to read. I had something from him. He was the other person that I was.
Can you hear me now?
Read. Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, it was this.
Okay. The joys of being live is technical issues of which I've navigated many before. So yeah, thank you. I have got a short passage from John I might read at some point through the talk. So yeah, thank you for mentioning him. Emma, would you like to speak next?
Yeah, so I found through the lockdown, I've had quite an isolated lockdown due to having 2 vulnerable people in my household. And so I've really gone deep within. And so right back from March, a lot of my work is going out, and I was forced to be in. So not going to communities, not going to see people, not being able to be out and present in the community. And what I found going within is naturally I've gone into nature and been held by the earth, and listened, similar to what Anu was saying, listening more deeply, and slowing down and being more present with myself. And that's been deeply nourishing, and paradoxically it might seem, but has opened up my pathway more in a way more clearly than rushing around and going out here, there and everywhere to do my work. My work has had to come back to nature, come back to myself, come back to what I do, how I'm doing it. So yeah, so it was very lovely to be invited to speak here, and to be speaking about nature, which is one of the fundamental aspects of my life, and particularly in shamanism, which I'll touch on later. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Emma. Thank you. Matty?
Yeah, thanks, Catherine. Yeah, so all I can say is that I come with 2 things in my heart tonight, and one is an awareness of the deep suffering that's going on around us, on a collective level, and what is really evident in our local communities, the grief and the fear, all of that that's going on, and just wanting to be aware of that.
Yeah.
And then on the other hand, or on the same hand, you could say, like a real strong sense of joy in knowing this kind of all-pervading power that is kind of working in the background and in the foreground here, and seems to be inviting us to ask these really fundamental questions, namely, who are we? You know, who are we? What are we doing? And that feels especially powerful at the moment, especially crucial at the moment. And that feels like a wonderful invitation and a positive thing. Yeah, that's all I have to say really on that. It's just, I'm really happy to be part of the conversation. I'm really grateful to you for bringing us together to talk, because it's such, you know, such deep work. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for being part of it. And it does feel like such a moment of opportunity this time. It just really feels like a moment to you know, reflect on what we've been doing, and if that's still relevant anymore, and kind of have this time to, you know, construct something new that we want to birth for the future. So yeah, so I'm really grateful to all of you for being part of this conversation. It feels like a really important time, and I'm hoping that we'll have some people live who will interact with us as well on Facebook. So I'll just, before we go into the next questions, I'll just have a quick check and just see if we've got any questions so far. No, I don't think we have. We've got some people watching us live. We've got Anna who's just saying hi. Yeah, no questions so far, but yeah, we might have some live questions from people as well. But it feels important just to kind of open this up in a broader space and get these conversations happening, you know, get these conversations happening. So I had some questions, like thinking about the three of you this morning as I was swimming in the sea, as I shared with you, which I'm doing every morning. Yes, I am officially certified crazy. That's all right with me. So, I never thought I'd be swimming in the sea in January. If someone told me I was doing that a year ago, I'd be like, what? But awesome. Can't recommend it enough, honestly. So yeah, so I was thinking of the three of you. These questions came to me to ask you about what you're doing right now. So who should I go first? We'll carry on in the same order. So Anu, I'll ask you the question that came to me this morning. So in the first lockdown, you were in London. So the three of us, we're all in Devon and lucky to have a real rural location and the gifts of being rural. But for the first lockdown, you were in London. And I was just wondering about how you found connection with nature in that time. And particularly in times when we're restricted from being able to directly access nature, if you had any ideas about how we can still find that connection, even if we can't access it directly.
First of all, I just want to share, I felt really deeply touched when Matti was sharing, and he mentioned the suffering level, and then he also started talking about the other side. And yeah, I suddenly start to feel really touched by that, the meeting of those sides, the possibility for the meeting of those sides. So coming to the question. So during the first lockdown, I was blessed enough to be living in North London, which basically meant Epping Forest was only a 30-minute car journey from the flat that I was living in. So I was literally taking myself to Epping Forest 6 out of 7 days a week. And I also have 5 cats, and I had 5 cats in a 2-bed flat. So I was surrounded by nature constantly. What really helped me was Epping Forest combined with John O'Donoghue and listening to his audiobooks whilst in Epping Forest, and just doing that constantly, near enough every day. It was, words can't describe. I felt in the past, I felt so often that the forest was a really nice place to be because it looked so nice, you know. But I now realize that back then I couldn't really feel it. You know, it was like I would be in there for maybe 30 or 40 minutes, and then I'd be constantly thinking about things that I need to do, places that I need to go. It's like, okay, this is enough now. Okay, now I'm leaving, you know? And I suddenly just, with the first lockdown, it just felt like everything stopped. This kind of, this buzzing that is very often happening in London, that is very much orienting around goal focus and the pressure of goal focus, which personally, as an empath and a sensitive, I experience as a degree of suffering, and it's taken me a long time to be able to contain that and not be so negatively affected by that. For me, the first lockdown, and I know that a lot of people were suffering and that still are, but for me, the first lockdown was like an epiphany, you know? It was like finally everyone and everything is stopping, you know? And somehow in that stop space, it was somehow more easy to access a level of listening that I had been unable to access in the past, as if the degree of my listening, the degree to which I am able to listen is not only connected to me as an individual and my own spiritual path and the growth that I do with the therapy and the meditation that I do with myself, but it's also connected to the whole, the collective. Where is everyone else at, you know? And to feel myself so affected by that, I hadn't realized before the first lockdown how affected by this buzzing, collective buzzing of society's goal orientation. I hadn't been so aware of how much that had been affecting me for so long until it stopped and there was silence, and I was able to feel and experience the silence. Like, I feel emotional saying that because I was never able to really fully experience that silence and that stillness before. And then to suddenly have John O'Donoghue in my ears talking about solitude, stillness and silence in this moment when that was exactly what I was becoming able to access. It was almost like, you know, this divine, or the synchronicity of somebody showing up in exactly the right moment and saying exactly the right thing that you needed to hear, basically. So that was my first lockdown experience. But one of the things that I've been using for the past 2 years, which I started doing about 2 years ago, is a way of connecting with nature without actually necessarily needing to physically be in nature. Is first of all is visualization. Is extremely powerful. And the second is using that in the context of being with an altar. So creating a sacred space in the corner of a room and creating different levels on the altar to represent different levels of the self. So for me, I often had 3 levels. So the base level was the ancestry and the roots. The mid level was the heart and all of the resources that I have in my life right now. And the top level is spiritual resources. So singing and drumming and lighting candles for my resources. Resources for nature. I also had photographs of Stonehenge and Jesus Christ, and all those representatives for the religion and the religion before the religions came, you know, there as well, and being able to connect with those frequencies, the frequencies of Christianity and paganism, you know, is a great resource for me. I felt I could bring myself into the frequency of nature without necessarily needing to physically be there. And that's something I think a lot of people find difficult because they're traumatized. And people who are traumatized need the support to bridge that, to make that step between these two paradigms of earth resonance within the self, and being able to embrace and own that earth resonance within the self. But some people need an external to help that bridging because of being traumatized. So in a way that speaks to my path as well. It's one of
Thank you. Yeah, I completely agree with you, Anu. I something I said, I think on the call last week, that I hadn't realised I was running on a surface level of trauma my whole life until this lockdown, and suddenly I'm slowing down, and I'm slowing down my whole pace of life. And something I'm also noticing with clients as well is just this kind of dropping that's happening. It's like collective dropping, and how, yeah, I also hadn't realized I'd been running on in a state of trauma. So yeah, thank you for naming that. Great.
And I'm not alone.
No,
You know,
absolutely.
I mean, it's easy to know that intellectually, but to actually feel it in the body,
Feel it. Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
it's it's another level.
It is. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So Emma, this is a question I thought of for you this morning. How is your work with shamanism informed by nature, and how does nature support your healing work?
So shamanism is completely interconnected with nature. There's no separation. So the practice of shamanic practices are deeply interconnected with nature, from the micro to the macro. So from, you know, the tiniest organism to the whole universal energy. And in shamanism, it's understood that everything has life, everything has soul, has spirit, has life force. So you can imagine it like atoms and molecules and particles buzzing around. So all that energy is life force energy, and we would recognize that as soul and spirit that we are totally interconnected with. There's no separation. So so in that sense, stepping into shamanic practices is stepping into a deeper connection with nature itself, and the idea, I mean, some might say the reality, but it's wherever we're at in our understanding of things, but that concept that we're one and that we're not separated, and so that when I speak, that has a ripple effect, or when I, you know, touch my hands like this, that has a ripple effect. Everything is connected in that way. And I think certainly in the whole COVID situation and the trauma that we are seeing emerge, and quite clearly, you know, and sometimes much more subtly, is I think there's somehow on some level a collective realization that we've become so separate from who we are as nature beings, because that's who we are. We've separated on every level, from wearing clothes to putting ourselves in houses, you know, on every level we are so separate now. And this is encouraged, and, you know, that we're in this whole consumer stage, that suddenly when we are locked down, or however we want to put that, certainly perceived freedoms are taken away. We've forgotten that in our hearts we're actually deeply connected and actually completely free. And actually, in many ways, the age that we live in has given us different opportunities to connect, like we're connecting now using this modern technology, which would have been unheard of a few years ago. And so somehow life has come working for us to create ways to keep us connected, despite this perception of separation, which of course isn't actually the truth, because we're not separate anyway. So so the basis of shamanic practice is this oneness, this interconnect, this understanding that everything is alive, everything has spirit, therefore everything can give us direct revelation. And just as much as I can get revelations from all of you here, so I could go to a tree and get direct revelations from the tree, from the river, from the ocean, from the mountains, from the grass, from the ant, from the bear, you know. And so how that, in terms of my actual practice as a shamanic healer, I very, very often merge with with the earth energy itself and have that running through me and transmute it in my body to become healing energy for the people I'm working with. So and that comes in very many forms. So it might be spirit animals, it might be the kind of sexual energy, that Kundalini energy of the earth. It might be in the elementals. Or there's lots of infinite ways of working with those energies in shamanism to bring healing to land, to objects, to buildings, to people, to, anything actually, because everything is alive, and therefore, and nature has a way of wanting to bring harmony and balance. So when things are out of balance, nature will find a way to fill the gap, to bring balance. And essentially that's an exact mirror of my work as a shamanic healer. Where there's an imbalance, I'll bring forth those energies in my body, transmute them, and bring balance. Hopefully that's the intention, to whatever it is I'm working with or whoever I'm working with. Yeah, so it's deep interconnection with nature. Yeah.
You could almost just summarize it in that word, couldn't you?
Exactly. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Thanks, Emma. Matti. So when I was thinking about you this morning, I was, something Matti and I share is that we've recently completed training. Matti as a counsellor, me as a psychotherapist, and we've talked on that recently. And what I feel really inspired by with what Matti's doing at the moment is he's kind of, as I understand it, taken his practice from being in a therapy room and taking it to being directly in nature, so working with clients directly in nature, which I think is a really inspired idea. And I'd just love to ask you a bit more about that, Matti, about your idea to do that and how it's going and what you're sort of noticing with your clients and how that is compared to working with your clients in the therapy room.
Yeah, thanks, Catherine. I mean, it's definitely like an emerging space that I'm learning to work with, and it's really exciting. I think it's important for me to say like where I come from in terms of my background on why I became a counsellor, because that really feeds into it. So I'll be brief on that, but I wasn't in mental health background at all, and I wasn't in social science or psychology. I did all my degree and everything in poetry, and that is a massive passion for me. But I found about 5 years ago this kind of crisis of faith coming, where I felt like, oh no, what does poetry give to anything, or how does that help anyone, and went into a bit of despair about that, wanting to be more helpful, wanting to make an impact, not in an ego sense, but in a kind of service sense. And I remember doing a leadership program with St. Ethelberg about 5 years ago, and chatting to a guy called Adam about this, Adam Bucko, who you might know, probably do know.
Yeah.
And I think he really saw in me that despair. And I said to him, Adam, what's poetry got to offer? And he was laughing, and he said to me, well, all right, what's the key element to a good poem? And obviously for me, the first thing that came was being able to listen. So if you want to make a good poem, you go out into the hills, go out to a river and listen. And it's this special quality of listening which I'd never been taught how to do, but I just kind of picked up, and it felt so natural. And he said to me, okay, so what you are then, if you can say that, is not a poet, but a listener. And one branch of that listener's path is poetry. But what might be another branch, of that path, which could be applied in the way that you're yearning to be of service. And I knew pretty much there and then that I had to train as a counsellor. It came instantly to me. Being a vessel somehow for healing, and using all the skills that I'd learned in poetry, the understanding of kind of subtle energies, the leaving of space, the deep kind of sinking in to a subject in presence. I knew that that could be applied to therapeutic work, even though I didn't know what therapeutic work really was. You know, I'd never had counselling before at that time. Yeah, so I went into it, I qualified, and yeah, all through my placement and through some of lockdown, I've been working in rooms as standard or over the phone. But I've been working towards and have began to now practice in nature, and it just brings a fantastic, as I'm sure you can imagine, just a fantastic quality to the work, which it's almost like when I work with a client in the woods, I am one of the counsellors, you know, and it's almost like I'm bringing them into a healing space in which I can hold that safety and that curiosity, but I can also introduce the client to a kind of nature connection which involves a lot of silence, basically, and a lot of retuning. You know, because like 1,000-year-old yew tree, for example, it speaks. Of course, it speaks in a sense, but it speaks on its own time. And sometimes I feel that my work with clients in nature is facilitating the asking of the right question, that is the question that is right for the client at that time. And then also aiding them in kind of retuning their quality of listening. Because I know when I've gone to see healers in the past, or recently even been to see a counsellor, and gone with so much up here, so much noise, and it didn't really stop throughout the whole process. There was so much busyness, so many questions. And I think if someone had just given me the opportunity to just say, okay, what's the core of what you're asking? And also told me, just wait, just stop. And I know it sounds incredibly simple, but for me, I think it would have been just what I needed. It's what I'm trying to offer clients in this work. Yeah, I think that's all I've got to say on that, really, Catherine. It's an ongoing thing, you know. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Matty. Thank you. Yeah, Anu.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that. I really deeply resonate, because I'm both a poet and a therapist as well, and I'm really finding a bridge at the moment in my experience between these two realms. Just in response to what you were just talking about, I did a 3-week experiment of working with clients in nature in Sweden this summer, and for me, the two things which stood out the strongest was working with clients in nature. It's like beginning with the solution. So before you even spoken about what the issue is, the solution is already presented. The solution is connecting with nature, the stillness of nature, and giving the body space to slow down at the beginning of the session. And then actually anything that happens after that, I'm in full trust that the solution is going to happen, because it's already presented, and it was, and I didn't do it. And then it also, that leads to the question which came out of your sharing as well: who is facilitating? You know, this is also my experience, that when I was giving sessions in nature, I had this question that kept coming strongly, like, who is facilitating? Because I often found there was insights dropping into my consciousness about like healing sentences and directions for the session that weren't me trying to fix something or trying to, you know, like doing the whole therapist thing. It was like I could feel myself being resourced by the environment. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I could really relate to that, and I was just thinking about you, Emma, as well. I feel that is something that we could all hold in common, that feeling of being held by something bigger in some way. Go on, Emma, I'll let you speak.
Yeah, it's interesting, and it's interesting how we've all ended up on this together, because I'm also a writer and I write poetry and actually some prose, if you can call it that. I don't know, it feels just more like, yeah. So yeah, and I've loved writing, and it's sustained me for a very long time, many years. Yeah, and when I've seen clients, I trained years ago as a counsellor and studied psychology and psychotherapy as well, and I found I remember when I first qualified, I think it was early 2000s, and I remember just sitting in a room thinking, if I'm going to do this for the rest of my life, I'm going to go bonkers, because I can't see 6 clients a day and be in a square room with a candle burning and think that that's somehow doing what I'm here to do. It didn't feel enough. And through my own life journey, I ended up going into shamanism, and over the years, seeing different clients in different, it's taken me to so many different environments, and also through my own shamanic trainings and experiences, and nothing beats being in nature. And I found when I work with clients in nature, so in a room, if I'm in a room or I've prepared a ceremonial space, I've done all that. I've done it with the spirits, but there it is, and the client comes in. If we go somewhere into nature, somehow nature provides the space for the client to be the seat or the place to lie down or to bathe in the waters or whatever it is. It's like nature already provides everything that we need, everything that there is for our healing is there. And I think this idea of slowing down is key. And this whole COVID situation that we're all in has brought up a lot of trauma, but it has also, for a lot of people, shown us it's time to slow down. And who are we? Those fundamental questions: who are we? Who are we when we can't see our friends, our family, our loved ones, when we can't nip down to the shops to get whatever we want? What does that mean for us? What I found in nature is everything's there. Everything's that slowing down, being present, and it's almost like slowing down the heart from that racing around that we've been in for so many years, that collective buzz I think you were talking about earlier, Anu, that noise that's just present. And I remember in the first lockdown in March, when there was no planes in the sky, and I actually cried with happiness that the birds finally had their own flight paths back after however many years. I mean, who knows how many years they either get hit by the planes and killed, or the helicopters, whatever, or they have to find other ways around these huge machines. And I could just see the birds, and I thought, finally you've got your skies back. And that really had such a profound effect on me, that understanding of how intrusive we've been as a species into nature, and it really felt like nature has had space to breathe, not enough space to breathe, I don't think, but certainly there's been a window where if we want to see, we can open our eyes and start to really see, and we can start to really feel with our hearts, and maybe take some different action, maybe change things, maybe listen to ourselves, to each other, maybe start to create something different. I feel like we have got this window to shift things, and that's coming back to ourselves, which ultimately is coming back to nature, and that nature naturally, of course, holds us in that process. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry for in the middle of you speaking, me dropping something, and I don't know if you saw that, and I'm trying to navigate this thing that is really not natural to me, which is to be here and keep an eye on this live business. It's not my instinct. My instinct is to really be here, whatever that is.
Doing it well.
You are doing it well, yeah.
I'm trying to flip between the two, and I'm just really aware, like, part of me is going, I can't quite do this. So I've decided not to worry about that, and I'm just going to be here. So yeah, sorry for the flitting between the two. It feels really unnatural to me. Yeah, there's some really nice common threads of listening. Like the word listening keeps coming up, and the things that the three of you have spoken so far, I feel so resonant with. You know, we're all quite, I mean, I'm not a writer, that's not particularly my thing, but the other things you've spoke about, the dropping, the listening, the chance for a reset, and something I just wanted to, I will come to you, Anu, in a sec. Something I want to come back to, because Matti, you touched on it, and Anu, you said you resonated with it, and I'm sure Emma did in some way as well, but just talking about what's happening around us. It's just sitting in my heart since you mentioned it, Matti, and I know it's something that, you know, we've talked about in the previous weeks, and I don't want to ignore that in our conversations. We're talking about this being a moment of opportunity, which I really think it is. You know, also I think it's important to speak to that as well, you know, how we can speak to the fear that's happening around us, and people that are really struggling. I mean, just today I think I spoke to 4 different people who were just really had enough, just kind of really at their edges of really can't take anymore, but they're having to in some way, whether that's being a single parent or, you know, struggling in a job. They're a frontline worker, one of them was a frontline worker, and just like, how much more can I keep going? And yeah, I mean, I don't know what we can hear the 4 of us speak to in that. So yeah, so I don't know if we could answer that question now, or maybe we could come back to it, but I just feel like it's here, and I'd like to speak to that. So Anu, should I let Anu go first? Because yeah, is that all right? So I'll let, yeah, so if Anu goes first, and then Matti, we can...
I just have something brief to say on this point. I feel like the first step is being able to honor that there isn't actually anything that we can do. Because if we can't get past that step, then for sure there's nothing we can do. That's what I wanted to say.
I think you cut out for a little bit there, Anu.
Did you hear me?
So there's just nothing. Sorry, I think my I'm not sure.
I said.
I think you cut out for a little bit.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah.
I said for me the first step is being able to accept that there's nothing that I can do, and just being able to be with that. And if I can't be with that, then for sure there's nothing I can do. I'm not going to be able to do anything. I don't have the strength to do anything if I'm trying to be a helper. You know, it's about coming into presence and being with, first and foremost, being with what is going on, being with it, not trying to do something about it. And when others see us being with it, that gives them hope, because they realize they can be with it too.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, thank you. It raises a question for me. I'll come to you, Matti, but the question for me, you know, from my experience of working with clients, and I do mindfulness-based psychotherapy, and we invite people to be with their experience. And for some people, that's the most terrifying thing to invite them into, is just to be with something, you know. It's not easy for many people. So I wonder, you know, how can we, you know, help someone to be, if they've, you know, if they've just been running on the surface of themselves their whole lives and have not known any different, and we're inviting them to be with something so unknown, what's a kind of a bridge between that experience of like running their lives in a certain way and coming to rest in the unknown a little bit?
Well, I show them through the osmosis of the relationship that I am being with them without the need to try to help them. And in their experience of that, possibly at a slightly unconscious level, they will begin to get it.
Okay.
But if I continue with a kind of therapeutic fixing behavior in relation to them, like I somehow need to resource them, then that gives them the message that they should keep on doing that too.
Okay.
So it's like presence as the medicine for awakening presence in the other.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. So yeah, great. Thank you, Matti. Go on. Did you want to add something?
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Catherine. There was a couple of things actually and I was actually, when I put my hand up, going to respond to what you were saying a little bit earlier about just what's kind of like, we could say what's going on in one realm, if you like. And it's a funny one because I'm not sure if I agree with myself or not, but I think I do. That like where I grew up, if you wanted to be like in nature in the sense of you wanted to see more than a park with an elm tree, you kind of had to have a car. And if you wanted to have a car, you had to have a decent job and an address and so on and so forth. And maybe you could get the bus to somewhere near and go for a walk, but the last bus back to the town centre was at 5. So there's only so much you could do. And so what I'm getting at is that I think like nature connection on a large scale, that there is a question of privilege in that. And yeah, I just feel like it's important to acknowledge how many people aren't able to connect with nature on the level that I feel that I need. And yeah, and I don't want to take anything away from that argument. It just feels like something that's been alive for me today when I've been thinking about that. Yeah, and also loved hearing what Anu was saying as well just then. I really just feel like what if there wasn't an answer, and just like, whoa, just the relief of the space that is there then, and the stillness that is there. Because I know for me, I'm living with anxiety for so many years. I'm growing up with OCD in my family and experiencing that so much, I'd say even to this day. The not knowing about a fictional future is the absolute terror of that. And then to hear like, okay, but there's nothing you can actually do in the present about the future on one level, and just the cool water that washes over me and the fear simultaneously when that is said, I think it's a fascinating approach, and I really, yeah, was really interested to hear that.
Thank you. Thank you. Emma, would you like to add something?
Yeah, so this is really touching on one of the core principles of shamanism, in that we're always in the unknown. We never know what's going to happen next. We like to think we do. Our minds tell us that we always know what's going to happen next. But actually, the truth is we've got no idea. And so in terms of when we were talking earlier about what's the bridge, particularly if people can't access nature, the bridge, certainly in my own practice, is breath, because breath brings us into presence. And breath is, in shamanic practices, the spirit of life. So you're breathing in the spirit of life force, and is one of the most sacred healing tools, actually. In one tradition, it's known as a nectar. So by breathe, and actually is understood also to heal anything if we know how to use our breath. And so for me, breath offers that bridge between between the known and the unknown, and the unknown and then the known. But we're always in that moment of unknown. So if we can breathe and begin to feel a presence within ourselves, it's what everything is doing on the planet, is breathing one way or another. However it does that, it breathes one way or another to survive. So we are naturally then allowing ourselves or enabling ourselves to drop into presence, which I think has been, we've said is actually one of the scariest things for many people to do, because when you're standing in full presence and everything's totally unknown, paradoxically, if you do it enough, you actually are in full power, and lit up, from all angles, from the inside out. And yet the fear of that is so great, most people spend a lifetime trying to avoid it by filling our lives with a load of rubbish. So if we can come back to that simplicity of just breath, I think that is it puts us in good stead for whatever it is that we're facing, which might seem very simple, but actually is a practice in itself, learning to breathe. Even though we all, it's
and it really is. It's the core of, I think, every spiritual practice I've ever come across.
I think it is. It is. It's absolutely
the first thing, and it's the last thing. It's what connects us between all the different worlds. So,
and there's many techniques, there's many spiritual practices, and there's lots of different techniques to breath. So if anyone is listening and doesn't know how to do it, don't worry about those. Just breathe, thinking I'm breathing in, I'm breathing out, I'm breathing in, I'm breathing. That's all you need to know. That's fine.
Absolutely. You can just really do that.
Exactly.
It's a good anchor, isn't it? Yeah, absolutely. There was something that I came across this week which really stood out to me, which you just reminded me of and what you said. I'm really studying Indigenous teachers at the moment, different Indigenous teachers, and there's a woman I'm listening to at the moment called Sherry Mitchell. It's her English given name. She has an Indigenous name as well. And she said something so clear and so profound, which is that when we really come into our own truth, we are safe. We are safe in our own truth. And even as I say it, I was just like, whoa, that's so profound. I think as someone in my own life who's really struggled with a sense of safety, I've really struggled with a sense of safety, and feeling under threat in the world for different reasons. And there was something about her saying that was so striking. I was like, wow, okay, if I really just anchor in my own truth, somehow in that I am safe. I am really safe. And it landed in me in a really, really, really poignant way. Anu?
I would have added to that sentence embodied truth, because I think truth, people can get very caught up in truth as a concept, and then that becomes very polarizing. So it's something about the embodied truth, the truth that I have access to within my embodied self. I really resonate with that.
Yeah, great, thank you. I'd really recommend her. She's an incredible teacher with a powerful message. I'm reading her, listening to her audiobook called Sacred Instructions, so I would highly recommend that to anyone who's interested. So I'll just come back to some of the questions we talked about beforehand. So one of them, talking more about resilience now, thinking about sort of resilience and personal resilience feeding out into community resilience. But on a sort of more personal level, what are you really anchoring into at the moment in this time as, practices of resilience, really, to kind of get you through, not just get you through this time, but ideally to thrive in this time? What are you doing? What's your kind of daily practices? Emma?
So my daily practices are embodied practices. I do a lot of sexual energy practices. So and shamanic practices, which are, I think it, you know, it's what you just said about the embodied truth. So so much stuff is about going out there, and actually there's a lot of shamanism which is about going out. Like you go out on a journey and you come back in. But a lot of women's shamanism is about the embodiment of spirit, of life force, of sexual energy, of healing, all of that. So my daily practices, they vary. I've got lots of practices that I do, but they're all, the one anchor is they're all about embodiment. So breath, touch, in terms of just, this can often help with feeling safe in your body, just patting your body. And, you know, it really helps the nervous system know that you're safe within your own kind of skin, quite literally. So very basic practices, and then that leads into whatever practice I'm choosing to do that day. A lot of movement, breath, and I am lucky enough to have access to nature, so I do that as much as I can as well. Sitting with a good tree is highly recommended, or a river or the ocean, and resting with them is something I really love to do.
Thank you. Matty?
I just was thinking about I think that there's kind of mantra that I've been living by the past maybe 4 months, I'd say, is a saying by a Zen teacher, American Zen teacher called Maureen Stewart, where she says the circumstance is the teaching. And this I remember coming across this when I was about 16 in a dusty old book, and I'd never heard of Zen before. And I went over it at the time and thought, wow, this is great. And I completely forgot it. And it just came back to me. And since then, I've been really, really bringing into my life the practice of the bow, basically. Just like my own teacher, Muji, talks about this, just saying thank you. And if something happens and it's not what you want, just saying thank you, just bowing. And there's some kind of wonderful acceptance in that. And I love that in Zen, the way that is so, that the bow to what is on one, that is on at one glance ordinary, it brings somehow this extraordinary magic to the space. And I remember at one point, I think I taught this at St. Ethelberger's when I was teaching a haiku workshop. And we were just practicing at bowing to a chair or bowing to the wall. And it sounds kind of funny, but I think, to sum up what I'm saying, small acts of reverence in daily life. Because it's somehow acknowledging a living, if you want to say, God presence in everything, which of course is, and breaks the conditioning of, you know, the word experience. I think it means things that happen outside of you. And so it breaks that conditioning, and we suddenly, it's like we're bringing in a sense, and making friends with, and that includes making friends with difficult circumstances.
Great. Thank you. I really resonate with that. I think that's something I've had more opportunity for. I've noticed with this slowing down and not running everywhere is opportunities to really have more of a relationship with the everyday little things in my life, you know, the preparing of food and the going to the beach and hearing the birds and acknowledging them when they sing and welcoming them. And, you know, they're little things I've noticed in my life, as you say, that I've really increased in their sort of space in my life. Which has been a real gift at this time. Anu, would you like to add anything to that?
It's like little fireworks going off in my consciousness. Like it's like it's like I connect to something and then I feel like, yeah, I can express that, and then it passes. It's like,
Yeah, yeah.
it's
That's how
like
it
another
goes.
firework. Oh, it passes again. Okay. Don't try and hold it. Okay.
Mm,
Yeah, it's gone.
it's gone. Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine. So, so just to say, I've just checked on the Facebook Live. Apparently, people are engaging. It says there's 7 comments, and I, for some reason, can't see them. So, sorry for people that have commented. Apologies. I've checked on my computer screen and my phone, and for some reason I can't see those comments, but it says there is 7. So I will have a look after we finish the call. And Anna has just said she's on the call now. So yeah, there's 1 comment that's come up, but apologies, they don't seem to be coming up on my screen for some unknown reason. I was saying to Emmy yesterday, I've had not great experience of doing Facebook Live so far. I've had lots of like technical issues, so the technical issues continue, but we're giving it a go again, because we do want to try and open up to having a live audience and live engagement and hearing people's questions, because the thing that I really love about doing stuff like this is, I have my own perspective of the world, and then someone asks one question from a different perspective and it opens up a whole different world to me. And I love that. It's something I love about doing collaborative work, is that we're so much more powerful and wise together than I could ever be on my own. So yeah, I really want to open to that, but I'll keep working with the technical issues. Hopefully we'll get to actually read the comments next week. But yeah, thanks guys. I'll just check on our questions. We've got 20 minutes left, and we've followed a lovely thread so far. So I'll just check back in with the questions that I originally considered and see where we got to with that.
In the meantime, can I share something that came back to me after taking
Please
a little bit
do.
of space?
Please do. Yeah, go for it.
It was an exercise that I hadn't considered before, but it might be helpful to some people. Closing one's eyes and remembering a time in one's life when one felt safe or supported, or that one had an inspiring experience, and then singing into the frequency of those internal images and memories. So bringing oneself into the resonance of those past resources through the resonance of the voice. So I often do that with candles at an altar, but I just have realized in this movement that it would be possible to close one's eyes, remember a time when one felt good, and then start singing in resonance with that goodness. And I think that's something that anyone can do, and that could have positive effect.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I like that. That's it. Yeah, nothing. Something I've never thought about, but yeah, it totally resonates as.
But it's also like songs, like sometimes you get songs that are really positive songs, and like that when you sing those songs or when you hear those songs, you feel more positive. So why not turn your positive life experiences into a momentary song? Like.
Yeah.
That's lovely.
So yeah, one question that feels important that I'd really love to ask you all. While many people are seeing this as a moment of crisis and chaos and despair in different ways, what do you think are the positive opportunities that are open to us at this time? Which is something I'm personally really resonating with, is actually this is a moment of opportunity with a big capital O, I think. What do you think are they? Yeah, do you resonate with that? And if so, what do you think are these opportunities that are open to us? Emma?
I think that we've got an opportunity collectively. I know our individual, it will be individual as well, but there's people having so many diverse experiences, from very traumatic to amazingly sublime. So, but on the whole, I think we are at a juncture collectively where we can Well, yeah, I mean, I was talking to some colleagues actually on a podcast a number of weeks ago, and we kind of likened it to going down the birth canal. So we're at a point where we can be birthing something amazing and new collectively, for the future of, you know, all the generations to come. And interestingly, when you give birth, there's a pause before the kind of final throes of labor, when the baby comes through the birth canal, and there's a pause where there's a quiet, and that's the time that you're most likely to be medicated or have intervention. And actually it's the time where you're actually just softening and quietening, ready to gather the resources to go for the final push to get the baby through the birth canal. So in a way, we're seeing a mirror in society. We're at this juncture where there is a potential for quiet and a pause and a slowdown and a thinking, who are we, who am I, what's actually really going on in this thing called life. And obviously we are seeing mass medication going on, so it's just a mirror. There's no judgment around that. It's just like, okay, this is an interesting observation. Because what happens actually if we do go into the depths of this? What happens if we do step deeply into the unknown? Well, at some point, we're going to find a jewel or a gem or a light that we can excavate from that darkness and bring up to the light and be like, wow, I found this, which we wouldn't be able to do if we didn't give ourselves the time and the space. And that comes back to what we're saying about being present, embodying breath, nature slowing us down. The opportunity, if you like, we're in the winter season, you know, of cycles. We live in a cyclical world, so we're in the winter, where everything seems like it's dying and it's doom and gloom, whereas actually there'll always be a spring that follows. And so wow, what could it be if we just stepped into that? Because we're all so scared of the wintry time. We shut it out, we won't go out, we put on the telly, or, you know, draw the curtains, whatever it is. But actually it's got so much to teach us. And I feel like the opportunity here is to stop, to slow down, to come into our hearts, to breathe, and to just be still. Actually be still. Something will come from that stillness, something will come from the silence, something will come from the darkness. It's something that we don't know yet because we haven't co-created it. It's new. And if we keep paving the new roads with the old stones, we're going to be repeating the same patterns. Let's see what comes up through the cracks. Let's see what the universe is offering us. And who knows what that might be. I don't think we know. I think we've got the opportunity to stop, be present, and witness what life is offering us, and then how we can co-create with that, with ourselves, with each other, with our families, communities. And so it will go out, and we have the opportunity for something amazing transformation. But it's en masse, very scary. We're in the unknown times that no one's used to anymore.
Yeah, and I've heard other women actually speaking very similar to what you just said about the connection between this time and the relation, the experience of growing a child and birthing a child, and this kind of, you know, moment of terror and I can't do this, I don't know what's going to happen, I don't think I can cope with it. All of that, you know, being in the mix, and how they're seeing a mirror between what we're going through and a birth process. So yeah, thanks for naming that, because I've heard that elsewhere as well. So yeah, reassuring.
So actually with that process has been suppressed so much, we don't need to go into all of that, but there's that actually experiencing it is we're so separate from it. It is very scary. We've made it a scary thing rather than a natural cyclical process of birth, life, death, all of that, you know. So, because yeah, you might die at the end of that process. We don't know. And I speak as someone who has experienced both life and death at the end of that process. So, yeah, we don't know. We do not know. Yeah, but the opportunity's there.
That's the thing.
It's the exciting thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and there is, yeah, exactly, yeah. Anu?
Just something I connected with that I was aware of before the session as something that might want to come in, and you just touched on it, so I'm gonna resonate there. There's something about the opportunity as a man to more fully be able to recognize the power of woman.
Yeah.
And feeling grounded in the reality that the power of woman isn't something that's going to knock me off course or harm me in any way. In fact, it's the opposite of that, that the power of woman has the capacity and the medicine to wake up my true strength. And I feel like it's important that this is somehow here, because this whole conversation about nature is very much a conversation about this relationship between the masculine and the feminine, the male and the female, you know, and the perpetrator victim dynamics that we have been going around and around and around in a circle for so many generations. And suddenly right now I feel like there's this opportunity to step out of that cycle and remember who we are. And one of the things that I love about John O'Donoghue is that he's a Catholic priest and a pagan. He's both. That you can embrace both, and there's somehow that is the medicine. The medicine is in embracing the perpetrator, and that somehow gives access to a deeper level of being able to listen to that which was once perpetrated against, and maybe is still being perpetrated against to some degree. But fighting the perpetrators doesn't help us to listen to her more deeply. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah, and it's something. There was a podcast I think I shared with some people last week with 2 Indigenous speakers, and they both said that how we treat our women is a direct reflection of how we're treating life and the earth. Yeah, and so yeah, that really resonates for me as well. Matti, would you like to say anything to that? This moment of opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, it's just a fascinating thing. When I read that, when you sent the questions out, I had this initial kind of repulsion to it, like, oh, opportunity, like. And then when I went into it, I was chatting to a friend who was telling me about a member of his family who remembers after the Blitz, and just being this I don't think it was in London, it was one of the major cities, but there just being this huge amounts of empty space in the middle of cities. And the feeling of seeing this emptiness in the heart of what we thought was a solid, you know, in the heart of what we thought this stuff would never come down. It represented us, and here it has fallen on the space. And I thought how beautiful that was. And then I was also kind of reflecting later and thought, gosh, but how quickly they filled those spaces with what at the time was a utopian dream, you know, on one level. And how quickly, you know, we look at these tower blocks that were built in the post-war era and how damaging some of them have been to people. And yeah, I guess my question is, what if those spaces were just given a bit of time? And what if we allowed those spaces, that emptiness, to speak, you know, without jumping in and saying, you know, this is what we're going to build. Because I feel like on one hand, the system that built those is crumbling, and on the other hand, the system that built those has had its cage prodded, and there's an anger there. We need to rebuild, you know, on this sort of fiery Lord of the Rings style situation. But those spaces will speak.
Yes.
No, that's all I have to say, I think, on that.
Yeah, go on, Anu.
So for me, I reflect that as the reclaiming of the transitionary space or the ritual, because actually modern society we've lost our rituals, modern Western society, for so many years. And a good example of this just popped into my awareness as Matti was speaking. It's like this common thing about when someone has a job that they don't really like, and they feel like they need to find a good another job before they leave that job, and they put it down to finance, you know. And often I don't think it is finance. I think it's that people don't want to feel that space. They don't want to feel that unknown space where they feel insecure and like they don't know what's coming next. And that's the opportunity, is what I feel like Matti was in a way just pointing towards, is to being able to reclaim the safety of transitionary space. There's something really beautiful about that, because we had that pre the institutions of religion and then more recently the Industrial Revolution, and it's just we've just it's almost like the you know, like the horse's blinkers have just kind of slowly gone like this, and then suddenly the pandemic, and it's like, oh, wait a minute, you know, like maybe it's safe to not know. Maybe. You know, just maybe. A little maybe.
Yeah, I think if I could give a little gift to everyone, that this will be listened to, you know, whoever's listening to this or will see this, if I could give a little gift to them, it would be that, I think, just to feel safe enough to embrace the unknown, because there's just so much possible in that, isn't there? Like infinite possibility. And I always find in my experience of life that I don't know what's best for my life. But if I give the situation space and something bigger than me can be here and work its magic, then somehow whatever could be, it unfolds, you know. It has, but yeah, it needs space, and it needs me to allow myself to drop in that space and be present with that space. So yeah, finding safety and space and the unknown, yeah, which is not easy for everyone. I think we're people that have worked on that, but it's
almost like the lockdown is a ritual created by life or existence.
Yeah.
No? It's like, it's gone, wait a minute, you've lost your rituals. There you go, there's one, take that. And feel it.
Yeah, bless. I still get, when I have these conversations, I really, like, my heart kind of goes, oh, but I know there's people that are really, really struggling with it, and I want to be tender to that too, you know. I want to be tender to those, to those people that have built their whole lives on these systems, and suddenly they're falling apart, and that must be really scary. So yeah. So we're nearly up to time. It's gone very, very quickly this evening. So I'll just finish with the last question, which feels like a nice question to finish on, which is, what do you see as the real challenge, if we kind of home in into what's the real challenge that we're facing at this moment? And what do you feel drawn to very particularly as a response to that challenge? Yeah, Emma?
I think I think the challenge is, who are we? I think it's an eternal challenge, but I think it's in our faces now, if we want to look at it. And because I don't think we haven't seen this kind of existential crisis for we haven't actually seen it before, and I haven't seen it in my lifetime. And yeah, so of course any existential crisis brings around the question, who am I? Who am I in relation to myself, to the world around me, to people around me, etc., etc. So I think that's the fundamental thing that's well, that's just come up, you know, that comes up for me. Who am I? Who am I? Who am I? And then from that, if there's the opportunity there that we take to go in within and listen or sit in nature, or whatever it is, there comes the next question: how can I be of service? And then that's where the doors start to open. And in turn, when we are in service, we discover more of who we are. So it's, yeah, I think life is giving us an opportunity en masse as well as individually to look at this. Because once we're in service to ourselves, each other, the planet, we can start to create a more harmonious, co-creative, relational place to be, to live and thrive, for everyone to thrive. Yeah, everything to thrive. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Emma. Anu, do you feel ready to answer that question? Or?
Yeah, I feel like the challenge is coming to terms with our mortality. It feels like, and I'm going to say this carefully because I don't want to go into my perspective on the situation, because I feel like it's always polarizing to have a perspective and an opinion. There's something about, I think as little as I can say is that the reality that everyone thinks is being amplified by the media massively. And I think anyone on any side can agree that the situation is not in exactly the same way as it's been expressed by the media, because the media always does that. That is the nature of the media. They do that in every situation. They make everything amplified and loud in your face. So the challenge is to become less identified with what we're being told. The challenge is to wake up to what we know deep inside of ourselves. That, in a way, that's the opportunity of the challenge. And to be less dependent on external sources of information and security, and to become more comfortable in our own skin and in nature, and, you know, not having to turn on the TV in order to feel secure that we know what's going on in the world. Because I think more and more people are beginning to realize that the TV and various technological sources of information are not really great sources to understand what's really going on in the world, you know, in comparison to the 50s and the 60s, maybe, you know, where it was like a real conditioning instrument. Whereas now I feel like, you know, I mean, my parents are conservative, and even they, during this period of pandemic, have been talking about they don't believe what's on the media anymore. You know, 20 years ago, they would never have said that, for sure, you know, and now they're saying it. So it does feel like there's a lot more doubt out there about, you know, about the information that's been received and what's really going on. And it's because nobody knows, of course. I mean, that's, we were talking about that challenge for like 15 minutes before the question. Like, it's this challenge to be with the unknown. This is the big one, in a way, which Emma started on in her sharing. Yeah, and embracing death, recognizing that death is moving towards all of us slowly, or maybe for some of us a bit more quick, but we don't know it until it comes.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, thank you. I want to finish on your answer, Matty, but I'd like to just answer something that is really alive for me in this moment in response to this question, which is, you know, there's so many things we could look at, you know, of like what the challenges are and what we need to respond to. And for me, there's one really practical one, which is food. I just feel like I'm becoming hyper aware of the unsustainability of our food sources. You know, every time I go to the supermarket, I can really look at where my food is coming from, and it's from Egypt and Peru, and I'm just, something's screaming inside of me going, this is fucking madness, and it's completely unsustainable, and it's gonna collapse imminently. There's something that's really like, there's an alert going off inside my system about food. And so one of the next conversations I'm having is going to be titled Reimagining Food, because I just feel like I really want us to be thinking about this before we're in the crisis of it. To me, it just like, it feels like it's coming. And it's a really practical thing out of all the things we could be looking at and exploring. But for me, it feels like, yeah, we've really got to reimagine our food supply, and that feels quite important. So that's one thing that's really speaking to me in a very embodied way at the moment. So, Matty, I'd love to hear your answer on this question.
Yeah, I got a couple of things that are sort of in my head, and they're not actually connected, so I'll just say them and see if they connect somehow.
Yeah.
I met an Aboriginal man once who told me that when there is a crisis, his community get together and sing their creation songs, which feels somehow significant, and it also feels like there's some grief for that with me, because I feel like, well, I don't think many of us know what the songs are, you know, or there's so much being contested about what they are. And when I think of a creation song, and when I close my eyes and I feel what creation is, I just feel an absolutely gorgeous stillness, which is infused with every creation song, which is before every creation song. And I feel like from that place, from stillness, there's this wonderful opportunity to thrive. But from the mind that we were taught to cultivate, I think, well, I definitely was at school and growing up, the mind of inquisitive, go-getter, successful, you know, problem solver. I think that's terrifying. And so it's like this thing where the challenge is a challenge to the one who has been conditioned. You know, that part of me is terrified, because it wants to know what's going to happen. It wants to know, can I eat? Can I look after my family? And the part of me that is observing that, it is just joyful. And in the Tao Te Ching, when it talks about this thing called actionless action, you know, acting from that place of stillness. The author says, when the work is done, everyone will just say, we acted naturally. And acting from that place of stillness, I think just so much beauty can emerge. But it's fraught with the riskiness of the conditioned upbringing, which says we need to do something, which again just comes back to the conversation about the unknown, which I'm so happy we've had tonight, because it's really been helpful to me, actually.
Yeah.
That's about all I've got to say on it, I think.
Thank you, Matty. I think we're going to have to finish, unfortunately, Annie, because we're already over time. So I'm sure I feel like this time has gone really quickly tonight, and there is so much more.
I just wanted to say one sentence, and that is, I really resonate with what Matty just said, and that we are the creation songs, and the creation songs are now. We don't need to know some traditional song from the past. Like, the songs are now, we can sing them.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I mean, something I was just quickly add on to the end of that is something I was saying to a friend today, is that through my journey of navigating all this at this moment, I'm aware that I'm searching for my roots. you know, I'm listening to Indigenous teachers, and I'm like, you know, like you said, Matty, I have this ache. I have this really strong ache. Like when I heard Tiokasin Ghost Horse speak, when he talks about his culture and knowing the stories of his ancestors and the, I just, yeah, I have such a grief that I just don't know my roots. I don't know my history, and something in me right now is searching for my roots. And I feel like that's a collective thing. I don't think that's just me. I think in this coming out of whatever we've been and that dismantling, I think there is something in the collective field of now trying to find our true roots, our real roots, whatever they may be. So yeah, I'll finish on that. Thank you so much, all of you, for this conversation. I really feel like we could go for another hour easy.
Yeah, definitely.
It's been a really rich conversation, and it has gone super, super quick, which is always a good sign that there's a lot of powerful content. So thank you. And just to add at the end, yeah, if anyone would like to know a bit more about Anu, Matty, or Emma and their work, on the Facebook event description, there is their website links if you'd like to look there. If you're looking on YouTube, in the description there is links there as well for their work. So do have a look if you're interested in what they're up to, because they're all doing amazing things. And next week we're going to be talking on the topic of sacred response. So yeah, I've got 3 amazing speakers again next week on that topic. We've got some more interesting things to come, which I will tell people about more next week. But thank you all. Wishing you all well with navigating these very, very strange times. And yeah, thanks for being part of this. I'm very grateful. Go well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.